What's up everyone, it's Clormo with another Logic X tutorial talking about loop and sample manipulation alchemy, and I want to get right into it because this is pretty much the last video on this alchemy series. Before I start pardon the whole crap that I have around me, as I probably didn't mention in the last video, there's some contractor work going on around the house, so there's a lot of craziness happening. But anyways, I don't know if the sound is going to be a little bit different. It's more openness around. But as usual, if you haven't done it or if you're just watching me for the first time, please subscribe, follow, like, all the good stuff, all the social media venues. They're in the video description down below, so you know where to find me from those. And let's just go to the Logic Pro X window. And a few things that I want to mention before starting. As usual, just a few caveats. We can do sample manipulation and loop manipulation in Logic Pro X in various ways. The XX24 is one that I've shown before, in chopping samples, speeding up samples, and all the good stuff, laying them out in your chromatic keyboard. Ultra Beat is another one that enables pretty good sample manipulation capabilities, and then Alchemy would be your third option. Pretty sure you have more, but Alchemy itself lets you use Apple loops as they are. It lets you use any other type of sound, like AIF, CAF, and WAV files. And the good thing about Alchemy though is that it will, if I go to source A, for example, and I would see the waveform there. If I go to edit, I would see the waveform there. I can specify start and loop and end points and loop points and other warp markers inside Alchemy itself. It's not that you can't not do it in Ultra Beat, for example. You can kind of play that around, but it's so much more powerful here in Alchemy, because on top of that you have not only a better interface in my opinion, but you will see in a second some of the stuff that we can do, like for example time stretching and pitch shifting samples in real time. There's a lot of real time stuff that Alchemy, especially the perform section, is known for. It's trying to sell you, right? So let's do a few exercises. If you haven't done it, I already did it before I started the video. We just go to File and Clear, and let's I have the tempo at 90. Let's make it, I don't know. Let's make it. Let's leave it at let's make it 120. Let's make it 120. And now let's see. Let's bring something into source A. Let's go to import audio, and instead of going here, let's see. Let's just go to the Apple Loop library, and let's pick something from here. Let's pick a beat. Let's go to hip hop. Let's see. Actually, you know what? Let's just search for beat and make it hip hop. I actually want something more vintage. My apologies for that. Let's just bring this basic vintage break. Let's bring it to our drop zone. Let's make sure that we have Spectrum format, which is the default when you clear Alchemy. And let's just import that into source A. Now that we have that in there, note that we have 120 for the tempo, but this original tempo is 100. And once you have placed it here, it's 8 beats, so it's 4 bars, or 2 bars long, I should say. I have 4 here. Let's just bring it to 2 in the cycle. It doesn't really matter because we're dealing with Alchemy, but just so you get used to that. And when you press actually, there you go. That's the original in C3. That's where you should be getting the original loop. You should play it in its native pitch. And if you play any other, like any other note, doesn't really matter. It's going to transpose it, but it's going to retain the tempo. So that's a very straightforward and easy way to do some time stretching, right? And without having to actually go into the time stretching module and put in your loop in a track like we have seen before. It's very simple. And then I can go to edit and start changing my loop points, right? My looping region, my start and end points. But notice that unfortunately when it brought this, it just decided to put some LFO modulation, and it's doing a ramp up. I really wanted to add that myself, but it just did it, you know. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna clear the modulation, and let's play that again. So it's playing now. Let's make that 0 at the speed. And that means that it can't really play out the sample because the speed is 0, right? It doesn't really move. So it's just trying to create something, just create a dot type of kick sound. So let's go and manipulate the speed a little bit as I play it. So that's changing your tempo, obviously. And in turn, it's going to sound very, very slow. But the point here is that I brought a drum break sample or Apple loop, and I'm creating here something in real time in Alchemy, right? If I start, notice how the speed picks up. Just think about 100% would be the tempo that's in the project right now. Anything else, you're pretty much changing the tempo. You need to press it. And then another thing that we can do, start changing the tempo here of the project. And we can do a few things. So I'm gonna just bring back that tempo just to make a point. And let's now alter the position. So obviously starting at a separate point. Let's make that 100. But my loop mode is continuous, so it's just gonna go and do a continuous because I don't have any modulation on the position. But my start point is pretty much whatever I say at the position. And I can also change the loop mode, etc., etc. So that's a very easy way and very straightforward way of manipulating loops in Alchemy directly without having to again put some other commands and and modules from Logic Pro X, like your flex pitch and your flex time and all that stuff, or having to do a lot of guessing with the EXX24. Also, the results are much better. Like the sampler in Alchemy is just the way to go, really, at this point. That if you're using the ESX24 to chop stuff up and then put it together at its original tempo and pitch, that's great. That's what I would recommend as a workflow. You should do your chops if you feel comfortable, right, in EXX24, then resample that, right, like bounce it as its own file again, and then make it an Apple loop, and then put it in Alchemy, and from there on out you can do pitch manipulation and modulation and other stuff in real time in Alchemy with its sampler, which is a superb option. Now let's introduce a little bit of modulation to modulate the precision with an LFO, which is what we had in the beginning. So let's just take this guy here, the position, let's bring it to 0. Let's just right click, add modulation, LFO, and I'm just going to do a new LFO. So now I have this sine wave LFO, right? It's right there, so it's a sine wave. I'm not making it up. It has the bipolar option on. Let's see what that does. It's really trying to go around that shape, so it's not really. And now when I take bipolar off, notice how that changed a little bit. Also the rate, it's what's really doing that. So it's doing like quarter notes. But if I match, we'll have the sync on. If I match the beats to what it really is, right? I mean the bars, right? It's 8 beats. If I match the bars here, so it's going back and forth because that's what I have. I have an LFO shape wave. But it's a pretty neat way of editing that. So now if I do the ramp up, pretty much get the same thing that I had without any modulation. But now notice how if I change the position and the speed, I'm gonna keep the speed at 100 first. Notice the area that is not modulated or ramping up based on the position, it's slower. It's going slower. That's going to be affected even more. So that area that is not modulated, it's going to be affected directly by the speed. The rest is modulated with this LFO with a ramp up, and its rate, it's matched to its real tempo or divisions or length. So it's going to sound the same. So we're doing some in between time stretching, like like at a portion of a sample right here in Alchemy, without having to do again kind of some tempo variations with automation and that type of thing. So I'm gonna bring that back. Actually, one thing before I continue, when you have your bipolar active, your LFO outputs both negative and positive values. So that's also why if I do that again, it's kind of like going up and down, but that's really tied to you see the bipolar is cutting my modulation in half. So let's try something else. Let's try ramp down before we move on. And now let's just notice what it happens there. So it's just going in reverse. Very easy to manipulate your samples in Alchemy directly. So let's see. And last but not least, let's try some different type of modulation on the position. We could modulate the speed as well. We could modulate anything, right? And that will give you different results. So, but I just wanted to show you position just to concentrate a little bit on time stretching and that type of thing, because that's the biggest use I think that big makers could to take from this. So now let me just clear all modulation as opposed to turning it off, and I'm gonna do a multi-segment, and I'm gonna do a new one. So that's what we have, and let's just play a few notes. All the speed. So that's nothing new. That's pretty much what we had before. But now in the multi-segment editor here, let's do a ramp up preset as well. So now that's more in tune with what we had before. And notice how it's in sync, right? So it's in sync with the tempo. Now if I turn that off, just take a second. If I change, actually, I'll have to do it here directly. Like if, I always have problems with this. There you go. So if I make it something like that, let's try that again. Actually, I don't know why I did this here with the cycle region. That has nothing to do. Okay. So now I time stretched that, right? Because I moved it myself without manipulating the sample itself. I just manipulated some points on the modulation that I added there with the multi-segment. If I bring it back to 4, it's in seconds now because it's not in sync. But if I sync it, there you go. There you go. So it's not perfectly now, but I think it was probably at 8. No, should be 8 bars. And okay, so now with multi-segment, it's important that you can also do some other crazy stuff, like, you know, right? Do instead of a ramp up, do multi-segments and add that modulation to the position and make it go back and forth or forward and back in between. It's important that if you're syncing, then you can make sure that everything matches with the tempo, and that, for example, if I add a point there at 5 and another at 7, and then I make, let's see, I'll probably leave it there. But let's make 7 something like 25, and then 9, let's make it something like that. Let's make it more like 50. Let's try that again. So, and I intend to do a separate video about this later, but this is kind of a way for you to do some scratching of samples in Alchemy itself. You know, you can add some modulation to a particular sample, make it go back and forth a little bit faster at the beginning, and then continue. So let's just try something like that real quick. Again, this is me just trying some new stuff, because I discovered this as I was kind of getting a hold of this tutorial. And there you go. And then the if I were to make it ramp up again, right? like normal. Yeah, something about there. Let's try that again. And then you go. That's scratching in Logic Pro X with Alchemy, and it's pretty simple. I was just pressing the keyboard note, and I added some modulation to the position, and that's it. I just scratch a little bit, and it went around. And I can even obviously go crazier and add some other stuff. Let's say for preset, let's go with yeah, these presets are not that great, but let's do a pulse 16. That's kind of a good one. And that's your own scratching right there. Pretty simple. No one in YouTube that I've seen doing Alchemy videos has done this. And if there has been anybody, if you're watching this video and you know of somebody that did it, my apologies. I didn't find any. But I want to concentrate later on one of those topics. One of the very first topics is going to be like scratching in Logic Pro X using Alchemy. And instead of a drum break sound, I'm just going to use something else with vocals or something like that, and then show you how to use the multi-segment modulation to achieve that. But if someone else did it before, my apologies. I did search a few videos, didn't see it. Again, if there is, my apologies. If not, I'm the first one. So make sure that if you find something, you know, if you find that useful, to share it and give credit. Okay. So that was really what I had with sample and loop manipulation. Again, I want to expand a little bit more on that later on, because for now we're done with Alchemy as far as the breaking it down and explaining it and all that good stuff about the series in English. Now I'm going to finish the Spanish version, which is pretty close to finishing up, and then I'm going to keep doing, like I've said before, some other topics. If you have any requests, you can make them, and remember, I'm going to do English and Spanish anyway, so might as well just ask me and I'll do whatever. So a lot of thanks to all the supporters, 130 subscribers at the moment that I was recording this video. So I'll see you next time. There's gonna be a little break from English videos as I plow through the Spanish version, and then I'll be back, and I'll probably in a month's time. So there's a lot of videos already in the series for you to go through. I invite you to go to them. See you in the next video. Peace out, people.